Welcome back to today's show, and we have a very special guest. I've interviewed him a couple of times. I think this may be my second time, but he's been a blessing, and he has his book. It's Dr. James Marcum. It's Medicines That Kill. But before we jump into that, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, David. My pleasure being here.
And we're just talking about things before, and there's such a dependency on medicines in this country. Now, we're just sharing about India, and y'all know that I go to India several times a year, and the reports that we bring back from India is amazing. But why don't we see that here?
Well, I don't think that we really depend on God like we should.
Amen.
And I wrote this book for people to be aware that, right now we hear a lot about cancer killing people and heart disease, but medications are actually the number one killer. And I go through and prove it. It wasn't a very popular book to write because no one wants to hear that the system is not the best system.
Yep.
But you made a great point before we were on air about how people, when they depend on God, that's really the type of healing we all want to have.
Yes.
And so in this book, I want people to be aware that medicines are dangerous. We hear about Michael Jackson and some of the celebrities like Whitney Houston and Heath Ledger that had overdoses. And we hear about all these dangers that medicines have. Well, in this book, I point out what the problem is, give some people some chances to maybe come off the medicines.
Yes.
But then I point him again to the great physician who, no matter where we're at, can heal us so we don't have to depend on medicines for our health.
So what made you put this together? I mean, I know you probably knew about this years while you were even in school.
Yeah.
And what was the revelation to you that I need to let the people know about this? I need to put this in print form.
A couple things. One of that, I've been a cardiologist for several years now, over 20 years, and we keep treating their symptoms. We don't fix them. The bypass just bypasses around. It doesn't take away the blockages.
Yeah.
Doesn't prevent the heart attack. So the same people keep coming back year in and year. And you look at the rate of cancer and heart disease gradually going up.
Yeah.
So we're not solving any problems.
No.
So I said, well, Lord, what is the real reason why we're sick? And we're sick because we're not living the way God wants us to live in many ways. And then it leads to medicines, and one medicine leads to another medicine, and then people think that's the answer. So part of the reason I wrote this book also is to let people know that is real not the answer, even though the modern media says it's the answer, even though the advertisements say it's the answer. Medicines just usually treat a symptom, and there's a place for that.
Yes, there is.
To give you time to recover and look at the real cause of disease. But we were never made to be on medicines for 30 years. We look at all the people that are just on them all the time, especially the narcotics. It's really becoming a big problem.
Now, what are some practical steps that we can take to decrease our need of medicine?
Yeah, some practical steps is first, know what medicines you're on and why you're on them.
Okay.
For instance, let's say you're on a sleep medication. You can't sleep. Well, those medicines are only for the short period. You want to know, why don't you sleep? Is it because you take too much caffeine late at night?
I think you're talking to me, Doc.
I think you're talking to me. Is it because you eat a big meal at night?
Okay, now you're really talking to me.
Is it because your mind's revved up? And if we can get those problems solved, maybe we don't have to be taking a medicine that could change our chemistry for the rest of life. If we have high blood pressure, maybe if we just start walking a little bit every day and cut back our salt, maybe those things will help improve it so we don't have to take a medicine and deal with the side effects. And if we're on medications, we want to know which ones interact, which ones we have to be careful with. For instance, if you take a fluid pill, that can take salt out of your body, potassium, get you dehydrated. Some of my elderly patients, they're in nursing homes, they get sick, they're not eating, and yet they keep taking their diabetes medicines, and their blood sugar goes too low. So there's lots of different things, practical things that people can do to be careful with their medications.
Now, are there some questions we need to ask our physicians before we even take a prescription and start taking a medicine?
The first thing is, why am I on this medicine?
Okay.
What are the side effects? What shouldn't I mix with this medicine? And is there any way I can be off this medicine?
That's a good one
and you might say, if you do this, a lot of people don't even talk. Well, if you do this, this, and this. For instance, a lot of people are taking depression medicines. Mm-hmm. Well, if they would just make sure they get some vitamin D, which raises serotonin levels, they get outside and do some walking, a lot of those people, that's just as effective as treatment as a medication would.
Yes.
And then you see all of these, in the States, in Newtown and Columbine, all these guys that go crazy and kill a lot of people. Almost all of them had medications on board which altered your thinking.
Yes.
These medicines affect systems that we don't really know sometimes.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, as a doctor yourself, what are things that you might consider before you even prescribe something to someone that that you have ran into lately?
Yeah, well, one of the things I want to know, is there any other ways? God's given us a lot of ways you can change the chemistry. Okay. For instance, you were in India recently. Okay. Did you realize that when you can bring people into worship, there's some studies done by Dr. Newberg, that if you can, people can worship 12 minutes over a course of 2 months. There's a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate which gets bigger. It makes more chemicals which help us to think better, and it knocks down chemicals that cause stress, adrenaline and cortisol. So just by the fact of bringing people to worship the true God, we can lower our stress, lower our blood pressure, lower our arrhythmias, improve our immune system, less likely to get infections. All of this by the single task of worship. Now, wouldn't it be better to worship 12 minutes a day rather than take a pill for anxiety if you didn't need to?
You know, you're right. I don't know personally of anyone, even myself, that does worship 12 minutes a day. But if it just praise and worship, I think if I'm going to try
a lot of people do it a lot more, though.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think if do it even more, if during my prayer time, I can put that worship in, and I'm going to see some change in my life.
Well, there's real chemical changes when you worship. So,
wow, that's amazing.
So when you're over there in India administering to people, when you bring them to a place of worship, when they know God comes into their lives, and there's real chemical changes when He says, "Create me a new mind." There's chemistry behind that. You know, create me a new heart, a new mind. There's real chemistry behind that.
What kind of opposition did you face when you put this book together? I mean, because, you know, in my eyes, I see medicine, and I see the big winners are the people that sell the medicine.
Yes, and you know, they control, the big pharmaceuticals control lots of things. They have big lobbies. They produce medicines left and right. They don't really care about the cause. It's a profit-driven thing.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And
we're a capitalist
society.
The price on this stuff has gotten crazy.
So they don't mind, because they think that people will still be slaves to the media and to what everyone's always taught. This is the way it has to be. We're going to keep taking these medicines. It's the easy way out. So they continue to do it. So my colleagues who are not trained in this, you know, they're trained to think, well, we're called medical doctors because we give medicines.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that heal through nutrition and exercise and spiritual things that change the chemistry every bit as much as a medical doctor does.
Okay. Now, how important is love and a relationship with God in a healthier life?
I think that's the key to healing, David, because we demonstrate the brain chemistry. When the brain chemistry improves, that gives you the power to understand truth and see in your life what needs to be changed. It's not easy to make changes.
No, it's not.
God works with you, and maybe something like drinking more water, or maybe not eating big at night. And it's a slow change, but even if we can't do everything right, and even if we have genetic disease that there's no cure for, we know in that relationship we can have healing in God's time. And some people He heals in heaven, some people He heals by helping us change our life along the way, and as you've seen, some people He heals suddenly just by His touch.
Yep. Now, what are some things that people can do when they go buy over-the-counter medicine? What's some things that they should look out for?
Yeah. For instance, the number one cause of fatal GI bleeding last year was aspirin.
Aspirin?
Non-steroidals.
Really?
Yes. That causes stomach bleeding. The number one cause of liver failure requiring a liver transplant was acetaminophen.
Really?
So when people are self-medicating themselves with over-the-counter medicines, know what the active ingredients are doing, know how much you should take. You know, some people say, well, I took one Tylenol, I can take 5 Tylenols. Not the case. You know, and some people with aspirin. Now, these energy drinks and these weight loss pills.
Yeah, talk about that.
All of them have stimulants in it that can race your heart. If you mix energy drinks and other stimulants and maybe some caffeine, you can have fatal heart rhythms. Your heart can just jump out of you. We've seen a couple ball players that die from these things.
Now, see, I told my son he had a heart murmur early in his life, and I told him not to even try the Red Bull, not to try the Monster. I've still, because I had one when I went into the military, and then it apparently closed up or whatever. I don't know all the details to it, but I've purposely stood away at an early age, 19. I purposely stood away from all the sports drinks as they came out, all the Red Bulls and stuff. When people started, take this, it'll keep you up so you can drive. I'm like, no, I can't.
And that was an excellent decision. But unfortunately, many people don't even think about these things. But they think, oh, it's out there. It must be safe. Someone must be testing it.
It's on the shelf. Right. You can buy it.
Yeah, you can buy it. There's no harm to this.
That's scary.
Well, this points out there is risk. Everything we put into our body has some type of risk. And we have to know what the risk and benefits of everything that we put in our body, both prescription and non-prescription.
We got about a minute left, Doctor.
Yeah.
share with anything you want to share with the people that are looking.
Yeah, I would like to let people know that, I wrote this book. It wasn't a conspiracy book or anything like that, but it's an awareness. And it points people to an awareness that what they put in their body makes a difference. And let people know that, we have a society, American Heart Association, we have American Cancer Society. Well, maybe we need to have a society for the smart use of medications to let people know that these medications can and do kill people, especially if they're not taking them responsibly.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Jim.
My pleasure, David. Appreciate it.
And
Thank
we
you so
enjoy
much.
having you here on the show. God
Nice
bless.
to be here. Thank you.